On one of the busiest roads in the state, and it's halfway done.
We're talking about the Skyline Drive to 168th Street project on West Dodge. It involves 4 of 5 major intersections. 6 News' Philip Catafamo found out when we can expect to see some relief from all that pesky congestion.
Construction at the 168th and West Dodge Bridge is creating quite a backup of traffic.
We have a sustained lane closure on the westbound off-ramp to 168th Street, so they're losing one of those left turn lanes there, and that has caused some backups, especially during the rush hour periods.
With just one lane on the exit ramp, traffic ebbs and flows, backing up in long lines. But crews have measures in place to help keep lanes flowing best they can. For one, delaying similar work at the 180th Street Bridge allows construction to continue on 168th.
The other way we alleviate it is there's extensive work occurring on those bridges and a nearby bridge just east of 168th overnight. That work starts at 7 p.m. and goes to 6 a.m. and that has worked out very well.
Other delays include tweaks to erosion control and pavement repairs. While those adjustments were factored in, they still create minor delays as the project goes along.
Erosion control is kind of not an exact science, and so sometimes you put something in, it needs to be tweaked a little bit, and so there'll be that going on throughout the end of the project.
NDOT District 2 is fully staffed, but with other projects going on at the same time, crews are occupied, which can put more work onto crews already on site. Gerbino Bevan says she should get some extra hands soon.
There are 3 projects that have sustained days and night shifts, and so this is very encouraging. Their night work's going to be done next week, and so that's going to give us tremendous relief.
Crews from Fremont have been giving them an extra hand. Work on 168th is anticipated to wrap up at the end of November. The next project is just up the street at 180th and West Dodge. Delays are expected to be similar to what we are seeing now. Bridge work on 180th should start in April. On your side in West Omaha, Philip Catafamo, 6 News.
The 204th and Skyline portions of the bigger project are almost done. You might be wondering about the 192nd Street, the other major interchange in the area. It's undergoing an entirely separate project, which should wrap up by the end